June 14, 1944, in Normandy. The fields near Linger were silent, excessively so. It was the sort of quiet that falls upon ravaged villages when every person with a weapon is preparing for their end. Then, at 14:27 hours, on the village's eastern perimeter, one British tank waited in an orchard, partially concealed by the boughs. A Sherman Firefly opposing 5 German Panther tanks. The events of the subsequent 6 minutes would become one of World War II's most incredible tank battles. A moment where an inexperienced crew within a modified tank the British Army had actively resisted shifted a battle's momentum by eliminating a whole Panther platoon by themselves. This is the account of Sergeant Gordon Harris, Trooper Alec MacKillop, and the Firefly that was never meant to be. To grasp the events at Linger, we must return 18 months prior, to January 1943, as a frustrated British officer. Major George Brighty stood before a Sherman tank at the Lulworth Armored Fighting School. He was furious. British 6-pounder cannons were ineffective against the new German Panthers and Tigers at a distance. The Americans were upgrading their 75mm, but the pace was too slow. German armor technology was advancing more rapidly than anything the Allies could deploy. Brighty glanced at the huge British 17-pounder anti-tank gun, then at the roomy American Sherman turret, and proclaimed, "Very well, if nobody provides a tank killer, I will construct one myself." He actually welded the 17-pounder inside the Sherman turret, without authorization, without official sanction. A prototype created from sheer desperation. It was hideous. It was tight. It almost fractured the turret ring. The kickback destroyed fittings. The radio was left without a space. There was insufficient room for the loader's movement, yet it functioned. The Ministry of Supply denied it on 3 occasions. Then, in June 1943, a different officer came onto the project, Lieutenant Colonel George Witheridge, an experienced tank commander who had been maimed in North Africa. Jointly, they redesigned the whole interior, compressed the gun breech, shifted the radio into the hull, eliminated the hull gunner spot completely, reconstructed ammo racks, and restabilized the turret. It was not just a prototype anymore. It was ready. And yet, by D-Day, just 342 Fireflies were available, roughly 1 for every 4 tank troop. This implied 3 of every 4 British tanks in Normandy were essentially useless against Panthers from the front. Soldiers started calling the Firefly the only tank that counted. German commanders also took note. Directives were issued, Fireflies first. Always, crews started camouflaging the long 17-pounder barrel using white tape, foliage, or dirt. Staying alive relied on remaining unidentified. Sergeant Gordon Harris, 31 years old, reached Normandy only 8 days prior to Linger. He was not meant to be a tank commander. He was promoted when his former commander was killed on June 10th, just 4 days post-D-Day after a Panther shell tore directly through their Sherman near Tilly-sur-Seine. His new assignment was a Sherman Firefly with a 4-man crew. His gunner, Trooper Alec MacKillop, only 24 Scottish, reserved and anxious. By the time of the Linger battle, he had discharged just 7 rounds in combat, 0 at enemy tanks. The 7th Armored Division, the renowned Desert Rats, was being decimated in Normandy. In only 6 days, they had forfeited 42 Shermans. German Panthers, a large number from the elite Panzerlehr Division, were controlling the combat zone. The Panthers were terrifying machines, 45 tons, 80 millimeters of angled frontal armor, effectively 140 millimeters. They bore the lethal 75mm KWK-42 gun, precise up to 1,000 meters and further. Facing them, a standard Sherman's 75mm was almost useless, frontally past 300 meters. The Firefly was the sole tank in Harris' squadron capable of piercing a Panther frontally from more than half a kilometer away. And Harris knew all 5 advancing German Panthers had a single objective: locate the Firefly. Destroy the Firefly. Linger, Normandy. June 14, 1944, 14:27 hours. The orchards vibrated with engine sounds, a deep mechanical growl moving toward Harris's location like a squall. 5 Panthers from Panzerlehr were approaching in an offset formation, 800 meters distant. Their commanders were seasoned veterans of the Eastern Front, men who had endured Kursk, Kharkov, and the extended withdrawal from Ukraine. They did not fear the Sherman. The tank they feared was the Firefly. Harris murmured into the intercom, "Gunner, on?" Mac Killip aligned the 17-pounder sight. His hands trembled. The Firefly held just 12 sabot rounds, the extreme velocity anti-tank projectiles able to penetrate over 250 millimeters of armor at short range. However, they were famously erratic past 500 meters. Harris faced a decision: risk the imprecise sabot from 800 meters, or use standard armor-piercing rounds more stable, with slightly less impact. He selected AP reliability over raw power. He held his position, observing the Panthers traverse an open field, their chassis gleaming through the orchard boughs. At 780 meters, Harris issued the command, "Fire!" The Firefly's 17-pounder detonated, a concussive blast that threw up a screen of dust, leaves, and smoke. The kickback jolted the turret. The first shell struck the lead Panther's turret face. The German tank convulsed, then halted. Flames started to creep from its turret ring. Harris did not celebrate. He just said, "Next one." The Panthers immediately spread out, hunting for the origin of the shot. The muzzle blast had revealed the Firefly's location. Mac Killip reloaded. Second shot, 720 meters, a hit on the side armor. The second Panther jolted to a stop. The three remaining Panthers then turned their turrets toward the orchard. If just one returned fire precisely, the Firefly would be ripped to pieces. Machine gun fire started to lace through the branches surrounding them. German tank commanders were hosing the orchard, attempting to make Harris relocate. He refused. Harris waited until the third Panther rotated, presenting its right flank. The third impact was devastating. The Panther's ammunition cooked off in a brilliant flash, the turret flying upward on a pillar of smoke. The last two Panthers sped up, attempting to shorten the range. Panther doctrine required engaging Fireflies within 500 meters, where German gun precision was almost assured and the Firefly's light armor was a simple kill. At 600 meters, Harris changed to sabot. This was the exact moment they were made for. Sabot up. Mac Killip steadied the long, heavy shell. His arms ached from the effort. Firefly loaders were perpetually fatigued. The 17-pounder rounds were massive. The shot rocketed out at almost 3,000 feet per second. It struck the fourth Panther with a high-pitched metallic crack. The round went clean through both sides of the turret. The tank did not ignite, it just stopped. The crew was probably killed instantly. One remaining. The fifth Panther started reversing, attempting to angle its armor. German accounts later depicted this as sudden panic, a veteran Panther crew retreating blindly from one Firefly. But Harris already had the tank ranged, at 540 meters. Last one. "Take him," Mac Killip targeted the driver's plate. The shell hit true. The Panther exploded in a pillar of smoke and fire. 6 minutes had elapsed. 5 Panthers were eliminated. One Firefly had endured, unscathed. The field east of Linger was quiet once more, save for the faraway crackling of burning armor. British infantry moving up behind the Firefly later depicted the scene as 5 iron behemoths, inert in the grass, all aimed at one tank concealed in an orchard. For the British Army, having endured grievous losses to Panthers and Tigers in Normandy's first week, the elimination of an entire Panther platoon by one Firefly instantly became legend. The battle was entered directly into training manuals. Think tanks analyzed Harris's positioning, using the orchard as natural cover, withholding fire until flank angles were presented, switching a P, and sabot, limiting movement to remain concealed and exploiting Panther side armor vulnerabilities. It was validation that, although British armor doctrine had fallen behind, the Firefly was the great equalizer. By late June 1944, Churchill personally was tracking Firefly production. Conversion rates leapt to 60 weekly. Before long, every 4-tank troop contained 2 Fireflies, offering them a viable chance against German heavy armor. From D-Day to V-Day, Fireflies eliminated an estimated 900 German tanks and assault guns, comprising 64% of all German heavy tank kills by British units. The 17-pounder gun would subsequently impact post-war designs, notably the Centurion, the first real British main battle tank. But Harris's Firefly did not make it through the war. Most Fireflies were dismantled by 1946, deemed obsolete artifacts from a frantic era of tank design history. Just a few are left in museums, yet their story, and Harris's 6 minutes of combat, persist as reminders of a reality often overlooked in conflict. Sometimes triumph isn't secured by the best tank on the battlefield, but by the crew that will not perish without a fight. The Panthers at Linger were elite, combat-tested veterans. Harris's crew was green, unnerved, and operating a tank created from persistence, improvisation, and wartime exigency. 5 giants were felled, 1 Firefly remained. And in those 6 minutes on a warm June afternoon in Normandy, a small group of men demonstrated that bravery, timing, and one perfectly placed shot can alter the odds of a whole battlefield.